Hi there. My name is Deirdre Kalman, and I'm with Quantum Living Creations and do a podcast from Quantum Living Conversations. And today, what I want to really get excited about and talk to you about is how unraveling my journey and some really basic things that I learned that helped me out when I first started making a transition to understanding at a deeper level how to really for lack of better words, to operate in this body, understand my emotions, how to integrate them, how to understand how I was feeling. If you've read any of my posts or blogs or anything, you probably see me talk about like 2012 was kind of a low point where I couldn't feel any internal resources to keep me moving forward. I couldn't, everything that I knew to create success in my life was either falling away or the harder I worked, the worse the results were. It was almost the opposite of what I had learned up to that point. And when I started to ask for help, I just kind of threw it out there that I actually don't know how to do this very well. So I need help. My sister actually sent me an interview of Gay and Katie Hendricks. And it was really neat because some of the stuff they were talking about was what I was experiencing inside, that they were breaking down the emotions and feelings and how we feel them in our bodies. Actually, they were talking about how to communicate what you're feeling, what you need. And honestly, they were just, they seemed like a genuinely loving couple. And uh, as I was watching them interact, I was really curious as to what that was. How did they break that? Because they totally admit that they came from different backgrounds as far as, not having successful relationships. And so, how were they cultivating a life they were happy to live in? And there just was a mutual respect between them that I really enjoyed watching. And so, um, as I've made the bigger leap into breaking down a lot of my paradigms and a lot of things that weren't working for me, and how do I use my time and energy and passions in the direction of where I want to go and what I want to create in life. Um, these three fundamental things I think I'm going to talk about today haven't changed. They're still true for me today. There's still ways that I keep things into check, and I fully appreciate how me and Katie Hendricks really broke this down and put this thought into my head. Or, you know, this new way of looking at life created an opportunity for really breaking down and changing hard fought paradigms and beliefs. And um, when I came back from my first training, I immediately started, talking to people about this and sharing, and yeah, I guess in a way teaching also, but just excited to share that there's other things going on that we can change our lives. And what if we could live our lives better. Um, and honestly, I think a lot of this parallels where we are in the world right now, and it's May of 2020, and um, just a lot of things that we see in our society that are kind of creating this really angst, and rightfully so angst and worry, and fear about how the future is going to look. So um, I really hope that this one or two nuggets of this will help you on your journey. And um, I also have to thank my sister for sending those videos out. She was the one that stepped forward and kind of out of nowhere and out of the blue shared that their video. So, and if I could remember the person who reviewed them, I think them. So I'm sure I'll meet them someday. Um, and so I think the very first thing that I learned from them in one of their 3-minute videos was um, where our emotions are stored in the body. Um, they talk, and part of the reason for identifying that is that helps to communicate what you are feeling. Um, and maybe everybody knows this. I certainly didn't at 37 when I first heard this, and it was really a kind of a revelation for me to help identify what I'm feeling. And so they pointed out that anger generally is felt in the shoulders and neck, much like the hackles when you see a dog up and you're hunched up. So anger tends to reside there for most people. Sadness is across the chest and lungs kind of area, and then fear is held in our belly and our intestines. And really, as I look back on like growing up as a kid and how I understood what I felt in my body and how sensitive I was to my environment and the people around me and their feelings and all taking all of that in, I actually had my understanding of where we stored emotion backwards. And it wasn't until I went to their training where we talked about what's going to be on the back here, and I've kind of adapted some of it, but where knowing that fear was in the stomach, I thought was anger. And as a kid growing up, I thought that just I was angry all the time, and any feeling down in there was kind of misplaced anger and hard to get rid of. And I also felt fear also down there and excitement and those kind of things. But at a fundamental level, somehow I had that backwards. And playing with that as I went throughout my day and noticing the different places in my body I was feeling emotions and feelings really helped me to start to see my world in a different way. And so as I took a chance and went to their 3-day course, they talked about how in this world we live in an adrenaline-based society. We're usually hanging out over here, um, playing any one of these roles and any one of the hero, victim, villain roles based on our fear responses. And the fear responses are fight, flight, and faint or fawn. There used to be 4 and they moved to 3. I don't know why things changed. And to be honest, I typically do not hang out here and think for the fawn, but I know other people do. And so what ends up happening based on these fear responses, we usually have a primary and a secondary response. And based on those responses and how we've learned and adapted in the world and grown up, we will play the victim, the villain, the hero, and we can play those roles in even in a conversation, um, based on the people around us, based on what we're feeling, and how uh, we've taught ourselves to survive, basically. And I think as you look in the world and just especially in these last few months, how much adrenaline is an energy to overcome fear, right? Like um, as we move in the world and we're feeling fear, we get adrenaline to try to move, and it's only meant to be used in short intervals. You know, fight the responses that fear induce keep us in that safety mode, in that how do I survive mode. One of my friends just used the example of like when you're being chased by the bear. I'm not sure where that accent came from, but by the bear, um, you need all that adrenaline to get away and focus on that. But you're not meant to stay in that energy, those chemicals that keep you to move. You're meant to come down and come back into balance and come back into harmony. And we really, in this society, what I've noticed um, throughout a lot of my experiences, we keep that adrenaline-based experiences going, and we kind of get used to it. Maybe some of us get addicted to it. Um, we never have really learned all the ways that we can uh, settle down and get out of this adrenaline-based interactions with everybody. You see it on Facebook, you see it in the news. Um, it's really not helpful because it's creating stress within our bodies. And so um, the first thing that we can do is recognize that we're in this dynamic. And how we do that is recognize and know what our fear responses are. So for me, my primary fear response is flight. Um, and that shows up kind of like I am right now, half facing the exit door, um, halfway out the door. And not that I'm scared, but this is just something new. I'm doing a recording and a teaching, and it's kind of new. So there's my safety net. There's my way that my body feels comfortable, um, kind of having that out. And so now I'm ready to go. And my second response that I'll do if that isn't an option is fight. So then I'll stand up for myself or others. And it's usually, for me, it's usually faced in standing up for others. It's probably the dominant one. I usually remove myself if I can, but if I have to, I'll stay and fight. And yeah, and then I'll do that also in myself if that's required. The fear and the fawn, I think they combine them because it was really kind of very similar energies, or similar body responses. And so the way that it shows up for those folks, and I've heard it described, is it's like a draining of your blood all the way down to your feet, or that deer in the headlight look. There's like no one there. And so those are ways that we can tell, hey, I'm in a fear response. My tendency in a fear response is to react rather than respond to what's really going on. And the difference between the two is that force, um, it's that safety response kind of reaction to, hey, I'm going to protect myself, so this is how I'm going to present in the world, versus, oh, I'm going to be present and I'm actually going to listen to what's being said and take it all in and not come from a reactive way, but I'm going to be able to choose and have the ability to respond to what really is in front of me, not all my past experiences. So the thing is, when we're in fear, how do we get out of it? What are things that we can do to, once we recognize we're in our fear response, the next thing is get present, right? And so for me, if I'm in that flight response, facing the doorway or looking outside, my biggest reaction and the reason we want to engage the body is because it helps us get into a place where we can feel safe and engage. It's the body's natural response to do these things. So we want to engage the body in ways to be present and let the body know that we're okay, right? It's running on its own, kind of subconscious or unconscious information that's going on based on what's coming in around us. And so the best way for me is to square up and face the person. Now, clearly, if I'm in danger, this is a different response. I'm imagining right now, like just interactions with people, a conversation, maybe a boss is giving feedback, right? Like all our favorite things. So the biggest thing for me is to square up and just get my feet on the ground, but get my shoulders pointed to where the people are, get my body facing the direction, and I automatically feel present. And when I do that, actually, right now as I'm doing it, I feel that kind of tenseness that was up here start to drift down into my legs and just, okay, cool, I'm here, I'm present. For a fight person, um, part of that is like an anger response. And so how do you come out of that anger? And one of the ideas that they used was having you use your imagination and imagine like a soft golden warm liquid kind of oozing down and melting your neck and your shoulders. You know, as you're imagining that, it really, that warmth and that comfort kind of comforts your body, right? And it sounds hokey, but you actually have the ability with your mind to create these sensations, which are changing the chemistry and emotions and feelings in your body to start to signal that you're safe. It's okay. You don't need to, react from a fear-based energy and it come out sideways at people that you actually may not need to take it out on, right? You don't need to come from an anger place. But we're trying to start to give us the bigger picture, to feel good, to be present, to really see what's going on, to help ourselves. The faint and fawn, there's kind of two ways that you can do that. With the energy leaving your body, you can pinch yourself. And so actually pinching yourself starts to bring sensations back in your body, pinching your hands or maybe your legs, like feeling different parts of your body, starting to reconnect that blood and that presence, get it start flowing through your system again. And then another idea that they had was like pretend to be a sumo, right? Like be present, right? Kind of the opposite of the plate. Try to pick up some of that energy and like, I'm here, I'm present, I'm solid. And that can work a little bit too for the plate person, right? Like as I'm squaring up, like, hey, I've got this. Just doing those simple things, recognizing, kind of coupled with fears down here in the stomach, sadness, and anger, as you're starting to recognize what the signaling is of the body, recognize, oh man, I am kind of doing a fear response right now. What am I not paying attention to? How can I get present? And, maybe I should put off this conversation. When you are actually in body, the next step is to take a deep breath. And what I actually end up doing, if I can, is as I'm taking a deep breath, I kind of just step back from the conversation if I'm standing or move back a little. And that, to me, I found signals kind of a, hey, let's take a better look at this. Let's have a different perspective. And I start to actually get more information when I do that, right? Because I've removed myself a little bit from the situation, another signal that I'm safe, I'm okay. Breath starts to move all these chemicals and energy. It also is a signal when you're sitting down and your shoulders are down and your head is down. You're actually physically telling your body you don't feel safe. And so the breathing starts to shallow out. And that signal also is a signal that you're not feeling safe. So as you're physically putting yourself in this position, you're showing your body we're not safe. And it starts to shut down. It starts to take care of the vital parts. So by taking a breath, you're actually opening up. One of the other things I point out to folks is that if you open up your shoulders, right, like kind of just sitting more, opening up your shoulders, you have to take a deeper breath because you're opening your lungs up more. And then as you can get into an even deeper breath into your belly, that oxygen is flowing throughout your body. And it's actually helping exchange the chemicals from that fear-based response to like a completely different response and presence. So the big thing that does, and I loved the verbiage and the words, and you've probably heard it from a lot of other different places, but I loved that twist is recognizing that you're in fear, moving out of it, and taking a deep breath gives you a greater ability to respond to your environment and the truth of what's going on in your environment, rather than those interactions that lead to nowhere and create more angst and frustration, right? I think for me, I use a lot of coworker kind of examples, just because that's where I got to practice it the most. So like, whoa, I can change the situation simply on my ability to respond differently than I would in the past. And by doing that, I have different choices. And that's really what we want in life, right? We want to be able to see, a different avenue, come up with more creative way of, rather than worst case scenario and best case scenario, both of which that we know won't happen. We have an opportunity to see more choices. We have the ability to ask questions. We have the ability to recognize someone else is in fear. So wait, let's stop playing this role, and what other things need to happen. Maybe it's compassion, maybe it's listening, maybe it's asking a question. They might not know that they're in one of these roles. And I don't suggest that if you tell somebody that you're playing the villain right now, like that might not be the way. But if you're free from that triangle and you're responding with it differently, which that could be leaving the conversation and saying I'm going to come back later, or it could be just not participating, then they're not feeding off of these responses based on fear. They're able to start choosing differently, and you just get to create that ripple effect. Yeah, I added. For me, I kind of added that step back because, in one of the situations, there just kept being a repeated cycle where one of the folks would constantly bypass my experience and go to other people, even if they were less experienced. And I was taking that personally. What the heck, I was making up all sorts of stories on how, disrespectful, how whatever, just all these stories that then I would go and recreate and live with for 20, 30 minutes later, and then hold the grudge against later. Like, I was just creating this dynamic based on somebody else's experiences and my responses to them. And so when that happened again, I actually had the presence to, hey, you know what? Let's respond differently. So, as I'm asking the question, taking a deep breath, kind of stepping back and looking like, what is really going on here? I just got this really overwhelming sense of fear. And, in that moment, I was able to have way more compassion than I probably ever have. And wow, okay, someone's just in a whole lot of fear, nothing to do with me. Um, let them play out their dynamic, and I don't need to keep taking it personally what's going on. And that was really an eye-opening moment for me to realize that, wow, this whole dynamic can be different, and they can still keep doing what they're doing, but I can live in peace within this experience, and I don't have to carry this upset and you know not being true to really who I was in my next situations with totally different people. And so, and I sat there during this kind of explanation, and I think they may have used a different thing than twist. That's just my interpretation now. And I was just wondering, like, here I am at probably 37 or 38 years old, really understanding a massive human dynamic that was completely playing out in my, well, all throughout my life, but also in my work environment, to include all of the people involved. And we're really not aware that this is what we're doing. And right now in the world, I think we see a lot of this going on. And we're not sure how we can kind of get out of that cycle. So for me in my daily practice, just this simple kind of outline made huge leaps and bound changes. And I was wondering during that workshop, like, what would happen if we like knew this at the playground kindergarten level, like elementary school, like how differently we could talk about emotions and how we responded to each other. And yeah, I was super curious about how we can really make massive amounts of change just within these basic understandings of who we are. And this and sharing these techniques with friends at work, we got to just experiment and see how our lives improved. And clearly, they improved a lot. If I'm still talking about this 8 years later, so um, this is or 7 years later. Um, yeah. So huge shout out to Katie Hendricks. I don't like recreating the wheel, so they have a lot of great programs. Please check them out. I also incorporate this with a whole bunch of other things that I've synthesized into how to better understand your body. But I also want to give folks really practical tools that they can use and access easily, especially with what's going on in the world and how we can improve our lives. And to me, going forward, I think there are new frameworks coming in and new ways that we're going to have to get creative and really look at the ways that we looked at life and how we've been living life and maybe make some changes going forward. Honestly, I don't know how the world's going to work. I don't know how this plays out, but I do know that we'll be okay, and we have the resources within us to make different choices. We have the ability to respond to our lives differently, and yeah, I wish you all the best. If you like any of this or are curious about my work, deirdrecatlin.com. I'll have all the stuff below. And if there are any topics that you'd like to cover, I'd be happy to look at and see how we can tweak and come up with ways to creative ways to make our lives easier. Wishing you all the best and have a good day.